I'm Josh. Today I'm going to teach you how to tie the bowline. First I'm going to tell you a little bit about this knot. It's a very useful knot. It is a knot that creates a static loop. A loop that won't change in size regardless of the load that you place upon the knot. It's also a knot that is very easy to untie. Now, what would I use the bowline for? I would use the bowline for an anchor if I needed to anchor a rope to something, so it can be used in climbing. I would use a bowline as an anchor for lashing a load down to the back of a truck, for example. If I needed to use rope to lash down a load, I would start with a bowline. I might also use a bowline, being a sailor, to tie my sheet or line to the clew of a sail. And anyone who has ever been sailing before knows that sails experience a lot of pressure, and even after a hard day of sailing, that knot is always easy to untie. Okay, a couple terms that we need before we get started. First, we need to talk about the rope and terms to describe the rope. So this is called the working or bitter end. This is called the running end. If we're in the middle of a line, this would be called a bight. Okay? And we would call this an overhand loop or an under-over. Okay. Okay, tying a bowline. We start with in my left hand with an overhand loop. I take my bitter end, or my working end, up through my overhand loop, around my running end, and back down into my overhand loop. So, let's note, we've got a couple shapes. We've got the shape of the overhand loop, but then we also have a horseshoe shape. These are two classic shapes that you will see in many bowlines, including the bowline on the bight. So we've got this horseshoe shape, and there's our bitter end inside our loop. I want to take my loop and my bitter end and my running end and tighten it like so. So put under a lot of load. Notice that that loop won't change in size. Even if I put my whole body weight onto it, it will not change in size. But even under load, I take my horseshoe, push it up along my running end, and it loosens off nice and easily. So, here's a bit of a trick for remembering how to tie the bowline. This is from the Cub Scouts. The rabbit comes out of the hole, around the tree, back into the hole. You grab the rabbit and its tail and cinch it up. And there you have the bowline. Now this is an inside bowline because the bitter end is inside the loop. Back to the Cub Scouts, if you tied an outside bowline, the Cub Scout master would get upset because that's not a proper bowline. Although it still works as a bowline, we want that bitter end inside the loop. Okay, now the bowline on the bight. The bowline on the bight has all the same characteristics of a bowline, but we tie it in the middle of a line. So I can have running end on both sides, so I don't have a bitter end to work with. So when would I use a bowline on the bight? Well, this would be an excellent knot for creating a rope ladder, so that I could create loops to put my foot in and climb up the ladder. Okay, so it's very much the same. We're looking for the same shapes. So I want an overhand loop, but in this case, I'm using two lines instead of one. So I've got my overhand loop, then I bring my bight up through my overhand loop, and here's where it gets a little interesting. So you'll notice above my overhand loop, that's my loop that I'm going to be finished with. So I want to make sure that I don't lose that, and I want to make sure I don't lose my overhand loop. So I take my fingers through my bight and wrap that bight around the knot and pull it tight on my loop, and there you have it, bowline on the bite. So now I have two loops that even under stress will not change. They're two static loops and easy to untie. So there you have it. There's the bowline and the bowline on the bite. An excellent knot because it creates a static loop that won't change in size regardless of the load, and it is easy to untie. Happy tying!